recording, please. Thank you very much. So, members, we are now live on YouTube. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Planning and Development Board. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence of members away on official business. Mr. Maxey? None? So we're all present and correct. Agenda item number 2 is disclosure of public or pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests. Councillor Dervix?
Thank you. I would like to say that I am going to abstain from the item 5A, PAP 2020-0561, about the trees in the Memorial Hall. I do not have an interest, but they are close enough to my office window to think it is probably better to declare because of the impact it has on that view.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mr. Clues, I did check the point on the later item and there is no need for you to declare an interest.
Okay, thank you very much.
If there are no other items, we move on to agenda item number 3, which is minutes of the meeting of the board held on the 5th of October and the 2nd of November. Does anyone have any corrections? Those meetings both went through the last full council. Does anyone wish to make any changes to them? If not, as it's essentially for noting, unless anybody wishes to raise an issue, we'll take it as read that we're all happy and move on, and I will sign them after the meeting. The next item, number 4, is the budgetary control report for 2020/21. Mr. Maxey, I know you're sort of here as Chief Executive / Head of Legal. Do you want to be Head of Finance as well and say anything about the budgetary control report?
It's a kind offer, but no, I don't want to be Head of Finance. I'm quite happy for Mr. Brown to be Head of his own finances. Thank you.
Oh, in that case, Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the normal report for the end of one of the periods, one of the quarters. As you can see, it gives the usual financial information. Of particular note is the fact that whilst we're receiving quite a large number of planning applications, they're all of a small and minor variety, and therefore the planning fees are much less than we budgeted for at the beginning of the year. And that's picked out in paragraph 3.1. If there are any further questions, Mr. Chairman, I'll do my best to answer them or take them back to Mrs. Garner, the Director of Finance, if necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. As I remember, could you give us a forecast as to what you think our performance will get to by the end of the year as a forecast of where the overspend will be?
I still think we'll be overspent on planning fees. Looking at planning applications and pre-applications in connection with those over the past few weeks, there may well be 1 or 2 major applications submitted, but I can't see us making up the full amount of the budget.
Thank you. Members, I did ask in advance of the meeting if there was a need for us to send a recommendation or a request to Finance and Executive Board for a supplementary budget, but I'm advised at this point that's not necessary. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. And again, as this is essentially a noting one, if anyone has any objection, we'll take a vote, but if not, we'll take it as read that we're all happy. Thank you, members. We now move on to considerations of planning applications. The first one is 0561, the Memorial Hall, Long Street, Atherstone. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is to do some work to a tree in a conservation area, and the only reason it's on the agenda this evening is because we actually own the land, and therefore it's a matter just of transparency that the particular proposed works are reported to you in the board. Let me just run through the slides. So this is a tree at the back of the Memorial Hall. It's T1 here, Memorial Hall and Long Street, and it's a plane tree London plane tree, and you can see that the proposed works are to do some maintenance to the proposal with a recommendation from the tree officer.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members, any comments or questions?
Councillor Garden, to propose approval.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Second that.
That's proposed and seconded. So if everyone could unmute while Mr. Maxey takes the vote. Mr. Maxey.
Thank you. Councillor Bell. I haven't started very well with your time limit, Chairman. Councillor Bell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Clues.
4.
Councillor Deakin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Dervix is abstaining. Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor David Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
4.
Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons.
4.
Councillor Hayden Phillips.
4.
And Councillor Simpson.
4. Thank you, members. That was carried unanimously, but with one abstention. We now move on to application number 562 for a further tree application at number 2 Owen Street, Alliston. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a little different in the sense that the application here is to fell the trees, and the reasons for that are given by the tree officer, which are contained in the report and the paragraphs in the report. I just run through the slides again. In this particular case, the trees are at the back of the flats in St Benedict's Close. South Street is down here. The council house is over here where we are at the moment. So that the trees are here. The whole group of trees is here. The tree officer is recommending, as you can see, Mr. Chairman, the reasons for their felling. And I'll leave it with you, Mr. Chairman, to decide what you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Before we have a discussion, can you confirm, are those red blobs in the right place? Because on the plan, that's indicating at the back of houses. I went to look at the site last Friday, and there's no public access there. There are trees at the end of St Benedict's Close in the car park, but I can't see there are any trees down at behind number 2.
I'm dependent on the tree officer's plan, Mr. Chairman. But if you look at the photograph on 5B/11, it does show that the trees are at the end of St Benedict's Close rather than between properties.
Thank you. Members, any comments or questions? I'd like to start off by saying I went to look at these trees on Friday. They are in a car park. They're not by a public footpath, aside from the car park. And the whole of the car park is in a pretty poor state. I'm not sure that it's entirely fair to blame the trees. So my instinct, I have to say, is that we defer this item for further information. But I'll go with your views. Any comments, anyone? Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I too visited the site Friday after you did on the way home. I totally agree with you. The poor trees don't seem to be doing that much harm. I know that the car park is in a bit of a state, but I think I'm not quite sure if that is to the blame of the trees altogether. And I'll support your amendment, Chair, to defer it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Dervix.
Thank you. Historically, we have had some problems with this car park and the state of it. Basically, the whole of that area until you get to the Chi junction with Owen Street. and I feel that a lot of the issues here may be it may be possible to address if the car park was repaired. We've had efforts by some of the homeowners to get rid of some of these trees at the back here before, and the conclusions in the past were that reduction in size would be enough to address those issues. I do think we need to find out more before we just get rid of these trees. They do have quite a big amenity value where they're situated, and even if we are going to replace them with what are termed more suitable species, it will be a long time before we get anything like the effect that we've got at present. I'm always reluctant to remove trees, but I can see that there may be a necessity when there is a severe trip hazard and possible problem for the council in the future. But I think we should look to explore every other alternative before we do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I completely agree. Members, it's been proposed and seconded for deferment. Does anyone have any alternative recommendations or wish to speak? In which case, if you would all unmute, and Mr. Maxey can take a vote.
So the proposal is for deferment. So Councillor Bell?
For.
Councillor Clues?
For.
Councillor Deakin?
For.
Councillor Dervix?
For.
Councillor Downs?
For.
Councillor Hayfield?
For.
Councillor Humphreys?
For.
Councillor Jarvis?
For.
Councillor Lees?
For.
Councillor MacDonald?
For.
Councillor Mawson?
For.
Councillor Moss?
For.
Councillor Parsons?
For.
Councillor Phillips?
For.
And Councillor Simpson.
4. Thank you, members. That's unanimous. We now move on to a consultation item number 15 for Birmingham Road, Water Orton. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see from the report, this is a consultation from Birmingham City Council, and it's in relation to high-speed rail. It's not an application for the tunnel at Bromford, nor for the actual construction of the portal entrance. As you can see from the report, the actual application is for lorry routes, and those lorry routes only to serve the site compound for the construction of the tunnel. The actual construction of the tunnel will, and the route into that for the construction of the tunnel and its portal will be off the M6 M42 link to the south of Water Orton, left out and left in to that particular road length. So let me just run through the slides, Mr. Chairman. There's only one slide, which members will have seen from the committee report. The actual proposed site of the compound is here, just inside Birmingham. Our boundary is somewhere down here. The motorway M6 here with the M42 down through here. The red lines and red arrows show access into that particular site, and the blue lines show access from that site via Castle Bromwich back to the motorway. The portal for the tunnel will be around about here with the site compound here. When the tunnel is constructed and it gets an approval under the Transport and Works Act, then there will be a haul road from here down to here, which is where the access will be gained for the construction of that particular tunnel and its portal, with a dedicated access from this particular spur road. However, the application that you have in front of us, well, it's not, is a consultation rather than an application, is just for the lorry routes to construct the site compound. In other words, just for the red and blue arrows on that particular plan, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Councillor David Riley, as one of the two local members, has indicated he'd like to speak. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I speak obviously as Ward Councillor for Water Orton. I also speak as North Warwickshire Borough Council and Warwickshire County Council's HS2 lead. My request to you today is that you do not support this consultation. This is on the basis that HS2 are going to put 40 plus HGVs through the middle of Water Orton Village, together with at least 1,000 other non-HGV movements a day. The scale and complexity of what we're talking about here is that HS2 used their powers under the Act of Parliament to relocate a tunnel entrance that will take the train to Birmingham. That tunnel entrance was originally in Birmingham at Castle Vale. It's now starting in Water Orton, and this compound and this lorry route are the very first pieces of HS2 work that will support that project. Members, I contest that 40 HGVs and, as I already said, what will be in excess of 1,000 non-HGV movements through the centre of Water Orton is wholly unacceptable. Why I think it's wholly unacceptable is that under the Act of 2017, HS2 proposed to build a haul road which ran along the M42 and around the M6 M42 loop that Mr Brown put on the screen and took you to Attenborough Lane, which is right by this compound. Now, using their powers under the Act, I think it's about 2 months ago now, HS2 decided they weren't going to build that haul road. They were going to relocate it to the point that Mr Brown has put on the slide, which is an access directly onto the motorway. My proposal, members, is that we decline this application because there will be amenity impacts on the village. Those amenity impacts will be the visual and the noise, there will be vibration, and there will be dust. There's no mitigation being proposed by HS2. They have the ability and the authority under the Act to continue to build the haul road that is in the Act of Parliament, which will negate the need for anybody to travel through Water Orton Village Centre, but they are choosing not to. So thank you, members, and thank you for your time, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Members who would like to discuss the item? I've got Councillor Dervix, then Councillor Judy MacDonald. So Councillor Dervix first.
Thank you. Councillor Riley has raised the points that I was going to raise and some more besides. The thing that concerns me particularly is the volume of that traffic going through Water Orton. It is going to have a serious effect, even if you only took into account the lorries. But when you add in the extra cars, the extra other movements in the village, it is a very considerable problem. Similar, I have to say, to the problem that I've been dealing with elsewhere in the borough recently over traffic. And that's if everything's going as it should do. The minute you have some sort of hold up, an accident or bottleneck the route, then drivers tend to find other routes around it. And as far as I can see, there is nothing to stop them doing that. At the very least, if we did respond to this consultation, I think we should raise those points and try to get a limit put on where the traffic can go. Because just because there is a red line or a blue line on the map doesn't mean that the traffic has to follow it, as far as I understand. But perhaps somebody could put me right on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dervix. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking both as a Water Orton resident, but essentially as a fellow borough councillor. Water Orton residents have to already put up with the M42, the M6, the toll road, etc. And they're used to hearing a lot of traffic. But the idea of this amount of traffic coming through the village is horrifying. Disappointing is an understatement. The route that they propose has already a rat run. So in for commuters, they're running through the village. There's always a lot of traffic jams. There are school children going to and from school and so on. And these aren't small vehicles. The 40 HGVs are enormous vehicles, besides the volume of 1,000 plus non-HGVs. So I would second what Councillor Riley has already said about the visual and the noise amenity. There's going to be a significant impact. And there's also the dust and the vibration impacts as well. And I don't think there's any baseline data that can be compared at whatever point. So I would actually propose that we do object to the consultation on the grounds that I've just said, the significant negative visual and noise amenity to the dust and the vibration grounds as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to completely support what Councillor Riley has said. I mean, this is a nightmare for any community. Whichever community was presented with a situation in our borough would be, well, totally devastating. It's completely unacceptable, and there are very acceptable alternatives here. I mean, it is ludicrous to try and put the people of Waterorton through this misery, which would be for some considerable period. It is completely unacceptable, and I honestly can't understand why HS2 Limited are actually even fielding the suggestion. It's ludicrous. So I completely support what Councillor Riley has said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we had a proposal from Councillor MacDonald. I'm happy to second that. Does anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Brown, do you have the details you need for the consultation response?
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. I can pick up the points that are made by the 2 or 3 members in response to Birmingham. Not a problem at all.
Thank you very much. So, members, if you could all unmute for Mr. Maxey to take the vote. Mr. Maxey.
Chairman, I don't know whether Councillor Dervix is indicating.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Dervix.
He had his actual hand up.
I'm sorry, I apologise.
And the icon up as well.
Indeed.
Basically, what I want to say is that I personally think that it would possibly be a mistake not to respond to this consultation, because then we would appear as an authority that it just isn't bothering to send in a response, and that our views wouldn't be included. Then I think it's more valuable if we actually make the points that we've made tonight and respond in that way.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I completely agree. Mr. Maxey.
So this is in favour of the consultation response, in addition to the items that Mr. Brown has just summarised or been put forward in the meeting. So Councillor Bell.
Just to be clear, Mr. Maxey, it's to object rather than have no objection.
Apologies. Yes, that's a reasonably important clarification. Yeah. So to object for the reasons that have just been outlined. Councillor Bell.
4.
Councillor Clues.
4.
Councillor Deakin.
4.
Councillor Dervix.
4.
Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
4.
Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
And Councillor Simpson.
4. Thank you, members. That was unanimous. We now move on to application number 358 for 79 Friary Road, Atherstone. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see from the report, this deals with an outbuilding in the rear garden of a property in Friary Road. Excuse me. The plans, which I'll show on the screen in a minute, are replicas of what you see in the committee report. This is a pitched roof building, which in fact has quite a large and significant basement. The same volume that's above ground would be below ground. And you can see the concerns that have been expressed by one of the neighbours about its potential use, its size, and also the construction methods. So if I just run through the slides, Mr. Chairman, so that you can have a closer look. Then you can see the position of the building there, as you can see, close to the boundaries of adjoining property. Then in terms of the actual usage, this is the ground floor use, which you can see is home office working effectively, and then the basement would be used for the hobby use, which we understand to be for train modelling. And then the next diagram shows it's the elevation, pitch roof, shallow pitch roof, but the basement clearly, as I indicated in the report, is immediately under it and the same scale and size as the building above. In terms of dealing with this, Mr. Chairman, then clearly members will all be aware of permitted development rights for outbuildings, and similarly to the case that we had last meeting with a building in the rear garden, if this had a flat roof, even with the basement, this would be permitted development. In other words, it could go ahead without the need for a planning application. It's only the roof that requires the application to be made and thus reported to you. And you can see, Mr. Chairman, from that's a material consideration. I'm recommending approval subject to conditions, and the conditions are similar to those that we had in the case elsewhere in Atherstone at the last meeting. In other words, restricting its use to just incidental to the host property. In terms of its construction, and that will be a matter for the applicant to take up with the relevant building regulation bodies or agencies. It's not a planning consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Just so that we're all clear, in condition number 3, it specifically states, and specifically not for any use within Class E of the order. Could you just remind all of us what Class E refers to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the result of the new use classes order, which came in at the beginning of September. Members may recall there were 3 business uses, B uses they were called, B1, B2 and B8. B1 was a normal business use or industrial use that could be conducted within a residential area. B1 has now been subsumed into a new Class E, which is commercial, service and business uses. So therefore, I've had to use Class E rather than the normal B1 in that particular condition.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members who'd like to discuss the application? Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. This is in mine and Councillor Singh's ward, and I've been down and had a look at this from the public paths that run by it. And inherently, what it is a 2-storey building with one of the stories actually underground. As Mr. Brown says, the bit that's above the ground doesn't really give me any concern, but I have serious concern of the chunk that's underground. If I can just put 1 or 2 figures to it, the hole that they've got to dig to do it is removing 120 cubic metres of soil, which, looking at what the weight of a cubic metre is, that is somewhere in the region of 200 tonnes of soil to be removed to be able to create this basement. My concern with that is that this is right at the bottom of that garden, and will it make the gardens from Lister Road that back onto it, will it affect those?
Kevin J. Oakley
is now joining.
I would carry on, Councillor Jarvis.
Okay. It's the stability of the things around it. And as I say, the Lister Road garden is very close, as you can see from the plans. But the other, I would say actually bigger concern is when you look at the lower edge, it's actually about 1 metre away from a public footpath that runs between Lister Road and Friary Road. Now, to dig a hole some 3 metres deep within 1 metre of a public footpath, in my view, would make that footpath very, very susceptible to slipping down that hole. The other one is that, as I stated about the amount of soil and etc. to come out of there, there is no other access to that side apart from down that public footpath. And it obviously need a fair sized machine to dig a hole that big. And I can see that possibly, or more than likely, there'd be significant damage to that public footpath, which is used very, very regularly as it's an access to Race Meadow School from the middle of their estates. I understand what Mr. Brown is saying about granted, but I think we need to get some more conditions on this to protect the outer edges of it, and particularly the pavement that runs at the side. Because if they're going to dig that hole, they're going to need to close that, because they've got to get significant machinery in to do it. And as I say, they've got to get 200 tons of earth out of there. What I would like to see is before anything is formally granted, is a method statement of how they're going to do it. Because as you look at it from walking down that path, it's going to be very, very difficult and actually damage other areas, particularly that public footpath. And agree with Mr. Brown that we need to exclude living and business use. But that is my major concern, is the story that's beneath the ground and the instability that it will create of a public footpath, and how they're going to get to it to remove, one, to dig the hole, and two, to remove 200 tons of soil, etc.
Kevin J. Oakley
is
Thank
now
you.
exiting.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to propose that we propose a recommendation, Chair. Move a recommendation.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Dervick.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm slowing things down a little by commenting on so many things. But I tend to agree with Ray that we really need to include something in this planning permission, if we grant it, about not being able to start work until a proper schedule of works showing the method that is going to be used. There are lots of ways that I'm sure that you can dig a hole like that without losing the path next door, putting in your wall first and all sorts of things. But I think we need to have some evidence of that, and some evidence of how they are going to address those problems, not least of which is repairing the footpath if it is damaged. And I think that something should be included in the application about that, or evidence to show that there isn't going to be any damage because it takes a different route.
Thank you, members. Mr. Brown, do you have suitable conditions that you could attach if we were to delegate this item to you to make a decision once you are comfortable with?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's what I was going to suggest. Councillor Jarvis mentioned a method statement, and that would be the suitable means of mechanism of doing that. In other words, a pre-commencement condition, so that no work shall start until such time as we have agreed that method statement. And the method statement can also include restoration and repair works to the footpath as well. It's not a full construction management plan, but it's more of a method statement, as Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Dervix has referred to. So I'm quite happy to include a condition to that effect.
Would you be happy to include that in your recommendation, Councillor Phillips?
Yes, certainly, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillors Jarvis and Dervix, are you happy with that as a solution? What I'd suggest as well is that Mr. Brown will keep in close contact with the two of you as local members to keep you appraised as to where we're going. Sorry, Councillor Mawson as well. You're on mute, Councillor Mawson.
Just to say that I second Councillor Phillips and agree with what's been talked about with the method statement to be
Thank you very
included.
much. Thank you. Councillors Jarvis and Dervix, are you okay with that?
Yes, Chair, I'm okay, but I'd just like the local members to be kept informed, please.
Absolutely.
Because when it does, we'll be the ones that get the first phone calls.
Absolutely. And Councillor Dervix, you're
Yes,
okay?
I take it to the vote now.
Thank you very much. So if we could all unmute, Mr. Maxey will take the vote. Mr. Maxey?
Thank you. And just to be clear, then it's with that additional condition around a method statement, pre-commencement method statement, and also the restoration plan for the footpath. Councillor Bell.
4.
Councillor Clues.
4.
Councillor Deakin. Councillor Deakin.
He's gone.
I'll come back to Councillor Deakin. Councillor Dervix.
4.
Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
4.
Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
Councillor Simpson.
4.
And can I just try again, Councillor Deakin?
Sorry, I was saying 4.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. That was unanimous and therefore carried. We now move on to application number 420 for land to the east of Islington Farm at Wood End. We have a speaker, Mr. Richard Brown. Mr. Brown, if you would stand by while Mr. Brown introduces his report. Mr. Brown.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll start with the plan. Members may well be aware and remember the big application that we had on the right-hand side of this particular site in Wood End for the 145 houses, the outline application for 145, which included this land, the subject of the current application, but also extended quite some distance over here on this side of the plan. That appeal was dismissed. And this application that we now have in front of us is an outline application for this particular piece of land, which is bound by the hedgerow and track, which goes up to Islington Farm here. The site itself, as members are aware, is an allocation in the draft local plan, and you can see reference to that in the committee report. The application would be accessed through the demolition of this particular bungalow here in Tamworth Road, and that access arrangement is exactly the same as was considered in the application for the wider site earlier on this year. The Highway Authority did not object in principle to the use of this access, and the inspector, when he dismissed the appeal for the larger site, also did not object to the use of this particular access. Pedestrian and cycle access will still remain here up to Islington Farm, as you can see from this particular plan. I've got nothing further to add to the report, Mr. Chairman, apart from some clarification and amplification of what's been happening since the application was, since the report was prepared. And this refers to the biodiversity contribution, which members can see in the section 106 paragraph on page 5E22. In the report, it just indicates the biodiversity contribution will be made. Since then, there's been quite a lot of discussion between the applicant and the county ecologist about this particular contribution. And the ecologist and the applicant have now agreed a revised contribution of £108,000, which will go towards off-site ecology improvements in the area over here. In other words, in Wood End, in the locality of the application site. The balance of the figure would be through ecological enhancements on site. So, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions as outlined in the report, and also to the section 106 as highlighted in the report, but with that variation in respect of the biodiversity arrangements.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And other than those particular comments, this is still an outline application.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Richard Brown, welcome to the meeting. Mr. Maxey will run through the issues with you on public speaking, but you're welcome to join us. Mr. Maxey.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Brown. You have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know at 2.5, but you can start in your own time.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you. Chairman, members, my name is Richard Brown. I'm a planning consultant speaking in support of the proposals on behalf of the applicant. As the case officer is confirmed, this is an outline planning application for residential development for up to 34 dwellings, and the case officer has also confirmed the details of the previous application for the bigger scheme, which appeal was dismissed. It is relevant that the application site, as you've heard, is a housing allocation within the emerging plan. It is allocation site H28. The National Planning Policy Framework was published in February 2019, and the proposals will deliver new dwellings and therefore contribute towards increasing housing supply. Paragraph 8 states the planning system has 3 objectives: an economic objective, a social objective to deliver more housing, and an environmental objective to contribute to protecting and enhancing the natural, built and historic environment. Paragraph 10 states that at the heart of the framework is a presumption in favour of sustainable development, and paragraph 11, which is particularly important here, states that for decision taking, this means granting planning permission unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The proposed development we consider constitutes sustainable development in accordance with paragraph 11 of the framework. It is considered that the application proposals accord with the policy framework established by the extant and emerging development plan. 40% of the dwellings will be affordable. Access will be taken, as you've heard, from Tamworth Road. The proposals include areas of green infrastructure, including attenuation measures, and the development will be landscaped throughout. The scheme proposals sustainable drainage measures that will not only provide drainage, but will be a feature of the development and provide an opportunity for wetland habitat in an area where it was previously not located. There are no objections from the statutory consultees.
That's 2.5 minutes.
Okay. The site is considered compliant with the objectives of the framework, in particular more efficient use of land and providing public and private outdoor spaces. To summarise, this greenfield site provides an opportunity to bring forward a high quality residential development at Wood End at a location that is identified in the council's emerging development plan. The conditions in the section 106, as the case officer confirms, have all been agreed, and I would invite members to endorse the case officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Brown. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? I can't see any hands, Mr. Brown, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Members, who would like to discuss the application? Who would like to start? Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, I can't support this. I'm going to be voting against it. I don't wish to try to persuade anyone else to support me. I've got no particular. In fact, I've got no specific planning grounds to vote against it. Just as a local member, I'm concerned about it, as most of the residents are. I think most people are in small villages. It never seems that the sort of consultees like the Severn Trent and everybody takes any or the highways take any notice of local people and local concerns. And for a long time, up in the top of the village there, where this is proposed to be built, we've had a lot of pressure with a lot of problems with water pressure, and for many years it's been sort of ignored. And I mean, I'm only going by what people tell me. I've never had a shower in anybody's house up there, so but I'm told that the water doesn't run well up there. The shower pressure is poor, the water pressure, and these are some of the reasons that I'm voted against it. I'm happy to see that there's 40% affordable housing, and I hope they stick to that instead of coming back perhaps later on and saying we can't afford it. But my personal vote will be against it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. I'm delighted to hear you're having socially distanced showers. Can I just say I understand exactly what you're saying.
I do try to save water, Chair, but nobody wants to save water with me.
Well, thank you. I think when this application moves forward, if it's granted tonight onto the detailed application, we'll make sure that the local members are very fully engaged in determining how to carry it forward. And personally, I assure you, we'll take all of your comments very seriously, because local members' views are important, and you've got a lot of knowledge that can help make developments better. Members, anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Mawson.
Thank you. Yes, this will be a blueprint for all the other small villages that's around to do it, and I think we need to get a grip with it and grasp the nettle to say that these small villages are being destroyed slowly but surely by 10 houses here, 10 houses there. Before they all add up, you got 70, 80, and it's destroying the village life that people want. So we need a serious look at this. And I'm with Aidan this time. I'm not going to personally vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mawson. Any other members wish to speak? I can't see any other hands, members, so to move us on, as I haven't had a recommendation, as this is an allocated site within the borough plan, I'll move that the recommendation as printed in the programme, but absolutely trying to take on board as we progress the concerns of the local members, which are certainly valid for sure. Does anyone wish to second that, or are there any other alternative recommendations?
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So it's been proposed and seconded. I can't see any other recommendations. So if we could all unmute and Mr. Brown Mr. Maxey take the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bell.
4.
Councillor Clues.
4.
Councillor Deakin. Councillor Deakin. Sorry, Councillor Deakin, I didn't quite catch that. Can we try that again?
I said I lost connection whilst people were speaking earlier, so I'm unsure what the proposal is.
So the proposal is for to grant it as per the written paper.
Okay. Again.
Thank you. Councillor Dervix.
4.
Councillor Downs.
Against.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
Against.
Councillor Moss.
Abstain.
Councillor Parsons.
Against.
Councillor Phillips.
Against.
And Councillor Simpson.
4.
That's carried.
That's carried, members, and outline consent is granted. We would normally move members to application number 5F, but I'm advised that some of our speakers are having difficulty joining the meeting at this point. So with your forbearance, we'll move on to the subsequent agenda item for number 3, Hillside, Kingsbury, and go back to that item when we've been able to fix the communication issues. So we now move to application number 340 for 3 Hillside, Kingsbury. We have 2 speakers on this issue, the first of which will be Mr. David Edge. Mr. Edge, if you could stand by while Mr. Brown introduces the report. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just turned the papers over. Hopefully members have read the report, but I wish to start by looking through the actual plans which were attached to the committee report. We can do that first and then I'll come back to the report. I'll just have to skip on. Right, so the application is for the retention of an outbuilding. As you can see, this is at the back here of number 3 Hillside. This is 3 Hillside, Hillside being down here, Rangeway being to the north. As you will recall from the committee report, these are bungalows and they are at a lower level than the properties here, the semi-detached properties here in Hillside. So there's actually a drop of about 1 metre between the back garden of this Hillside and that one in Rangeway. As you can see here, the report referred to a boundary here, which means that the rear gardens of numbers 8 and 10 here are much smaller than the gardens of the properties here in Hillside. As a result of that, this means that the actual building itself is not rectangular, as you can see from the particular proposal here. The original application was for retention of a building flat roof across the whole of the particular construction, as you can see here, to be 2.6 metres. As a result of objections that we received, we were able to seek an amendment to that, and the proposals that are now shown on the slide here. The storage area is to be 2 metres high, 2.6 retained for 2/3 of the building, as you can see here. The storage area is down here, and the gym is over here. And you can see here from the rear elevation the change that leads to. So, Mr. Chairman, if I can go back to the committee report, you can again see that this is an application, although it's retrospective, the applicant is perfectly at liberty under the Planning Act to actually submit an application to retain what's been built. As you can see from the report, we have received those amendments. Now, as we had earlier on the agenda, an application for an outbuilding is normally permitted development in terms of their construction within a residential curtilage. In this particular case, it is the only reason why an application has actually been submitted is because of the height, that 2/3 of that remaining building. If that was reduced from 2.6 down to 2.5, it will be permitted development. In other words, probably just one course of breeze blocks. Now that has been achieved on one side, but it hasn't been achieved across the whole of that rear elevation. And as I said, if that happened, it will be permitted development. The objections that you can see referred to in the committee report basically refer to the dominance of this particular building, as particularly seen from the rear gardens of Rangeway, and there are some photographs attached in the report from those particular rear gardens. We have speakers, Mr. Chairman, and I know that one of the speakers has raised objections several times, and I suspect you will want to hear what he has to say. But at the moment, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is for approval subject to the same conditions as we've looked to previously when we've been dealing with outbuildings in terms of their use and making sure that this particular one applies to the amended plans that have been received.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Edge, welcome to the meeting. Mr. Maxey will explain the rules of engagement, but you're very welcome to join us. Mr. Maxey.
Thank you, Mr. Edge. So as you've seen before, you have 3 minutes and I'll let you know at 2.5 and you can start in your own time. Can you hear me, Mr. Edge? You may be on mute at the moment. Mr. Edge, are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Mr. Edge, yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm David Edge, and I've been made a spokesperson by the objectors for this application. What I've got to admit to you is that the negative emotion and the mental health impact. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry about that. I'll start again. Right. Yeah, the negative emotion is quite a mental health impact on us due to the overshadowing. And mainly, it'd be nice if the board would come down and pay a site visit just to see how bad the building work is and the height of it. It is the winter now, and the leaves have dropped, and you can really see how stark and oppressive the structure is. The building stands at the moment is quite shoddy in its building. But the main concern really is the land's been built upon. Back in 2017, November, it was raised almost a metre behind number 10 Rangeway, and they've built on top of that. Now, that's within the 4-year rule, I believe. If you need to raise land by over 0.3 metres, this has been raised to a metre. And enforceable action could take place. Although they say the permitted development is 2.5 metres, with the raised land, you're going well above the 2.5, and it's not the 2.6, in my opinion. And again, it'd be nice for some board members to come down and have a look. I understand they say that the neighbours either side have got the same level as that garden, but if they have, that's because they've raised theirs by stealth. And in fact, on the one side of number 1, you can see clearly in the concrete level how they've raised the land, and again, a site visit would clear this up if you come down to have a look. And again, the gardens slope from hillside down to Rangeway, and it's quite a steep slope, and the only way you're going to make a flat area to put a building on is if you build up. And what's happened in this case, the applicant has built up on the boundary fencing, obviously I've said before by a metre, to level it up. Instead of digging back into the hill, they've added soil at the bottom on the boundary fence, and consequently the height might be 2.6 metres up the hill, but it could be 3.6 metres on the downside, and the closest to number 10. It really just looks like the Berlin Wall. I understand the case officer has put forward some conditions if it gets passed today, and that is to render the back. That would be to stop the visual impact.
James Taroni
is now joining.
You let me in. What do I press now? Hello there.
If Mr. Taroni could just be quiet a minute, Mr. Edge, if you can just continue. I've stopped the clock. But you're very close to 2.5 minutes anyway, so I won't interrupt you again. So you're at 2.5 minutes. So
yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. Yeah, right. Obviously, our main concern now is the height of the building because of the made-up land. I think that would go under planning permission, and I'm surprised it wasn't put in the retrospective application because they raised the land. Again, at the front, it's 2.6 metres. If you come to the back, it could be 3.6 metres because of this raised up land, and that's within the 4-year rule. And obviously, either side have raised their gardens by stealth. If the case officers put forward a rendering of the back to make it look cosmetically look better.
Mr. Edge, that is 3 minutes, and I've been
okay. Thank you very much for your
on the timing, so I'll have to stop you there. Thank you
very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Before you go, does any member have any questions?
David Edge
is now exiting.
Well, it's good to see you do questions. I'm just going to ask Mr. Edge. But
you're on mute, Chair.
To our second speaker, Mr. Rob Duncan. Mr. Duncan,
you're on mute. You're on mute, Chair.
Mark, sorry, I was on mute. So Mr. Edge has left us, so we can move on to the second speaker, Mr. Rob Duncan. Mr. Duncan, welcome to the meeting. Mr. Maxey.
Good evening, Mr. Duncan. You have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know at 2.5. You can start in your own time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. My name is Rob Duncan. I'm an independent planning consultant appearing before you this evening on behalf of the applicant. The proposal before you is very simple in planning terms. The principle of development is acceptable in this location, and the design and appearance of the outbuilding is low-key in nature and does not derive any adverse impact to the character and appearance of the surrounding area. The main issue raised during the determination of the application has been its perceived impact on the amenity of neighbouring occupiers, specifically the occupiers of number 10 Range Way, which lies to the northeast of the site. Upon being notified of those concerns, the applicant has worked constructively with your officers to arrive at an amended plan which has comprehensively addressed the concerns raised about potential impact on neighbouring amenity. The resultant building has two roof heights, one at 2.6 metres high and the other at 2 metres high. And as you've heard already, the tallest part of the building, which is the furthest away from number 10 Range Way, is only 10 centimetres taller than that which the applicant could also otherwise be free to undertake as permitted development. The lower section of the roof is some 50 centimetres shorter than that which could be undertaken as permitted development, and I therefore agree with the planning officer's assessment that the proposal before you represents a significant betterment in terms of residential amenity impact compared to that which the applicant could otherwise undertake without the need for planning permission. You've heard from the objector accusations that the land has been raised up by 1 metre. There is no evidence of this at all. The applicant has indeed provided photographic evidence that demonstrates that this is not the case, and that has been considered by the planning officer. And as discussed in the committee report, the alteration of levels within the garden area does not require planning permission. The established fallback position available to the applicant under permitted development carries substantial weight and leads me to conclude that there is a compelling case for planning permission to be granted. I therefore urge members to endorse the recommendation of your officers and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? In which case, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Duncan. Councillor Andy Jens, you've indicated that you'd like to speak on this issue. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would just like to speak very briefly as the local member on this. I don't know the applicant, and I've got no reason for objecting to building a structure like this in his own garden, but I do have concerns about its actual location right on the boundary of the neighbours in Range Way. Mr. Edge, I think, has detailed exactly what his concerns are, and I'd share those in general terms. I think Mr. Edge's suggestion that the board carry out a site visit is probably the sensible way forward. Because I think it's probably worth seeing the building that's been done already from both the applicant's point of view and from the objectors in Range Way, and I definitely think it's worth, before you make a decision on this application, to make such a site visit. As I say, I don't have much more than that to say, because I think Mr. Edge has sort of highlighted all the problems that he sees. The only thing I would say is that if the building is to be rendered, I don't see how that can be done at the rear elevation that faces the objectors, because there's no room to do that from the applicant's property as far as I can see, and I don't really see how that would be done. That's all I think I need to say at the moment. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Moss.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I endorse what Andy Jens has said, Councillor Andy Jens. It's difficult. Often these things appear straightforward under the permitted development rights, but then a big difference in elevations, and there is here a considerable, makes a lot of difference. I do think well, I won't say the only solution. Before I cast a vote, I would like to have a site visit, Chairman.
I take it you're proposing a site visit, Councillor Moss?
I will propose a site visit, yes.
So, members, Councillor Moss has proposed deferment for site visit. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. If we could all unmute and take a vote, Mr. Maxey.
Before we vote, could I just make a comment? I've had my hand raised for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Dervick. My screen was on the wrong bit.
It's put right down in the corner.
Yeah. Councillor Dervick.
It's just to comment that yet again we have retrospective application for planning permission, and I would just like to lodge my unhappiness with the fact that we've got yet another one coming to us after the building has been substantially completed, and I just like that fact to be recorded somewhere or passed on in some way to the applicant, whatever the outcome. That it's not really the right way to do it, in my opinion.
We'll certainly pass that on, Councillor Dervick. My apologies. I'd moved my screen up a bit so I could see where the speakers were, and I didn't go to the top where you were sitting there with your hand.
It's getting hidden by the beard.
It's my fault on this occasion entirely, so I apologise. So, members, does anyone else wish to speak before we take a vote on a site visit? Okay, so it's been proposed and seconded that we defer the issue for a site visit. Mr. Maxey.
Councillor Bell.
4.
Councillor Clues.
4.
Councillor Deakin.
4.
Councillor Dervicks.
4.
Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
4.
Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
And Councillor Simpson.
4. So, members, that is now deferred for a site visit, and I look forward to seeing all of you at that site visit. We now have both of our speakers with us for the previous item, which is application number 349 to the land to the south and southwest of Whitegate Stables, Kingsbury Road, near Marston. We have two speakers this evening on this issue, the first of which will be Mr. Kevin Oakley. Mr. Oakley, if you could stand by while Mr. Brown introduces his report. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since actually writing the report and preparing it and circulating it, we've had two additional background papers from residents in the local community. Mr. Oakley is one of those, so rather than me try and summarise his representation, I'll leave him to speak in that respect. This application was reported to you some time ago now, and a deferral was made at that time, so that see if the applicant could address some of the representations that were made by the local community. And indeed, 2 or 3 meetings did take place as a result of that, and further meetings took place with the county council in terms of the highway impacts. The case officer went back to the Highway Authority and to HS2 on several occasions, but as you can see from the report, HS2 have not objected, and the County Council's Highway Authority have not objected, subject to conditions, and those conditions are contained in the recommendation that you have in front of you. As members are aware, again, from what we've been discussing tonight, there are permitted development rights for car boot sales. They can hold up to 14 in a calendar year without the need to submit a planning application, and therefore, from a planning point of view, those are unregulated. No planning conditions can be attached to them. Indeed, as members may know, as part of the emergency COVID regulations, those permitted development rights have been extended such that next year car boot sales can take place on 28 days in a year rather than 14 without the need for a planning application, but that's only a temporary for a 1-year period. So that particular fallback position is quite significant. In terms of the controls, this application is for 28 days, and therefore, because a planning application is necessary, it does give the council the opportunity to look at controls, management and operation controls of the actual use and activity on the site. That is explained in some detail in the committee report, Mr. Chairman, and the conditions do reflect that. in terms of looking at a site management plan for the operation and also for a traffic management plan, as was recommended by the County Council. In this particular case, because of the issues that have been experienced in the past, it is necessary, I think, to look at the need for a temporary planning commission. Clearly, the local community would only want that to be for a year. The applicant, I assume, would want a much longer period. But I think from the Borough Council's point of view and the Planning Board's point of view, you have to be reasonable if you are looking at a temporary consent. Quite a bit of investment has to be put into this particular site to make it work and for it to settle down in terms of its management and operations. And as you can see, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation is for a 3-year consent. The conditions also limit the number to 28 days. They also limit the time period in the year when those 28 days can occur. And you'll see that from the report from the 1st of April to the 31st of October, which is, I think, 28 Sundays anyway. So the difficulty that we might have had in the past on counting events should not occur with that particular condition. Let me just run through the slides, Mr. Chairman, so that members can remind themselves of where we're talking about. This is the general location plan. The Kingsbury Road is along the north here from Kingsbury, the Coton roundabout, and clearly this runs up to, I can get the word to work, clearly up to the M42 and Downton Island up here. This is Haunch Lane, which goes down into Lee Marston, Blackberries Lane down here. The Lee Marston Hotel is here, and there are several residential properties here immediately opposite the site in Haunch Lane, and Marston Village is up here. As you can see, it's bounded by Haunch Lane, the Kingsbury Road and Coton Road, and then the EA Environment Agency Depot is down here. And then in terms of the actual layout, access would be off Haunch Lane, and you can see there's an existing access here, but that would be improved, as you can see here. And these are the stacking lanes, which are referred to in the report, such that cars can enter and wait without having to actually wait and park in Haunch Lane. The egress would be here onto Kingsbury Road, which has been agreed with the Highway Authority as a single lane, and then people turn actually left or right. In terms of some of the amendments which have been made, then the whole of this area here, from here to here, has been moved further away from Haunch Lane. The original application had it here and quite close to Haunch Lane, but the whole thing has been moved further away. And this is the area where the planting would go, as is indicated in the committee report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there are speakers, the applicant and the objector, and they'll be able to indicate to them their main concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Oakley. Mr. Maxey will explain the rules of engagement, but you're very welcome to tonight's meeting. Mr. Maxey.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Oakley. Can I just check that you can hear us and we can hear you? You will need to unmute yourself, which I think on the phone is *6. Can you hear us, Mr. Oakley? Mr. Oakley, if you can hear us, you need to unmute yourself, which on the phone is *6.
Is that better?
Mr. Oakley, yes.
Hello?
We can. Hello, Mr. Oakley, we can hear you now.
Right, okay, fine.
Okay, so you've got 3 minutes. You've got 3 minutes. I'll let you know at 2.5. And as
Okay.
we can hear you, please carry on.
Thanks very much. Good evening, councillors. I have been involved with this application for some 2.5 years, and during this period have provided constructive comment via community engagement. I've continued with this approach up to the present, and I have presented a community engagement paper in response to the current Planning and Development Board paper presentation. A copy of this has been forwarded to planning for further comment. The board report indicating the granting of planning consent does not represent a fair outcome or benefit for the parish of Lea Marston and Marston when taking into consideration the HS2 trade-off. Planning has progressed the application to achieve a greater status of planning control, but there still remains outstanding issues appertaining to on-site issues. There are planning issues outstanding, and they appertain to the following. There is no consultation for the existing flooding that occurs in Haunch Lane. The landscaping should be subjected to a landscaping scheme as it has not addressed the fulfilment in reducing visibility in the green belt. No design requirement has been requested from the applicant for the entrance and exit works to achieve rural aesthetics. I now go on to off-site. Off-site involves environmental concerns, which would involve introduction of restrictions of signage on highways and public signs, whereby it is required that would be a 5-mile radius from the operation, which would help surrounding parishes from the awful amount of signs that get put up for this particular operation. There is also traffic issues to the external perimeter lanes, especially around Marston, which interfaces with the traffic problems with the water park. People park in Marston to avoid paying the entry fee into the car boot. It is pleasing to see the level of planning conditions proposed and the site management plan, but additional conditions need to be considered and introduced. I refer to the lack of benefits for the parish and draw attention to the pressures imposed by extending 14 days to 28.
That's 2.5 minutes.
This has to be viewed in the context of adding 14 events from another car boot within the parish, with a total event of 42 in a year. This is not acceptable, and judging by the comments made reference COVID-19, it would extend to 56. I request the planning board to consider if planning control have mitigated the risk to safeguard the parish and its parishioners, and ask that the application is deferred for further engagement and consultation.
That's 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oakley. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Oakley? In which case,
I, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Moss.
Sorry, I'm late. I haven't put my hand. Well, I put my real hand up, but not pressed the button. Do you still have problems here? There have been in the past, though I have to say I haven't had any reports recently, of operators of this site actually directing traffic, which the police tell the parish council is illegal, and showing preference to people turning into the site, thus ensuring that tankers and other vehicles pile up considerably over the small roundabout and up onto the Marston bypass, the straight mile it's usually referred to as, but it is the Marston bypass. Do you have that problem at all?
Well, the situation is obviously those existing problems do still exist. But when Mr. Brown was explaining the traffic management plan, which would be instigated by highways, that would obviously go a long way to alleviating a fair amount of, shall we say, the illegal activities of the past.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oakley. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? In which case, Mr. Oakley, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our second speaker, Mr. James Taroney. Mr. Taroney, welcome to the meeting. Mr. Maxey.
Again, Mr. Taroney, can I just check that you can hear us and we can hear you?
Marvellous. Good evening, members of the board. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Mr. Taroney, you've got 3 minutes. I'll let you know at 2.5 and you can start whenever you like.
Marvellous. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I have this planning application several years ago, as I would like to obviously improve and also add additional dates from 14 to 28. I have operated car boot sales within the Warwickshire Borough for nearly 28 years now. I've also had car boot sales literally behind my own property. So I do understand locals' needs, and I do try and keep everyone happy, which unfortunately I can't do all the time. The site that we have, I purchased 5 years ago. It has excellent access and also egress. We've operated on there for 14 days the last 5 years, and I've had no problems with traffic and also the management of the site. The site has only a few houses overlooking, which I know is ideal. However, I do have the opportunity to have other sites within the Marston area and also within Warwickshire where I could operate a car boot. However, I find this site the best, which works well. We've had no traffic problems. Any traffic we try and keep on the site, which predominantly we do. It works well because 98% of the traffic comes from the junction 9 and 42 end, and accesses directly, or egresses directly left onto the Kingsbury Road, so we don't have any hold-ups. I feel that we've run a very good event. I do understand that the locals probably aren't the best fans of the car boot sale. However, we are legally allowed to do the car boot sales, and I would very much appreciate it if you could actually give me the planning so I can move forward. It's very testing in difficult times. We found the car boots a great way for people to actually make a living, and give people the opportunity to a day out, which is not organised, and it's literally from 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. on a Sunday morning and a Saturday morning. And I would very much appreciate if you can actually help me with this planning application, and I would do my utmost to not let anyone down and have no problems going forward. I do understand that there might well be, but I will do my utmost to keep the locals and the local parish happy. There's not much more I can really say. Jeff has worked with me for 28 years. He knows that I run the show.
That's 2.5 minutes, Mr. Truney.
But I do appreciate time, and thank you very much, members of the board. I feel like I'm waffling on, but thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? Mr. Tony, I have a couple of questions, if I may. There has been some conversations earlier on about changing the access from Haunch Lane and Kingsbury Road on to Coton Road. Is that something that you're happy to consider?
I would be happy to consider, albeit I hadn't considered it because there's obviously not an access there, or egress there. But if there was the possibility, it probably would work well to have that option. But obviously there'd be a lot of work involved with that. So I'd have to remove trees, and it's something I hadn't thought about, but it is a possibility, yes.
Thank you. I think we've also talked in the past about your operations on other local sites. Could you let me know, or the board know, what your intention will be on other sites if you were to have the wider application granted here?
Well, I've operated on Hamsford site for many years, which is the site on Hams Lane. I've also operated on I call it the George Bain site, which is where HS2 are currently working and the lakes are. I've also operated with Charlie, which is just off the Kingsbury Road near Charlie Cooper's new farm, and also at Dunton Vets. I have several sites that I could use, and I've tried to keep it out of the village because I, for one, have operated car boot sales beyond my house. I do understand the problems, and I do understand that, which is good, really. Because I don't want to cause any problems. I live in the borough. I live within 3 miles. A lot of my friends live there, so I don't want to upset the people that I know, as well as strangers. But I do try and run a good show. If I don't get the 28 days, I will have to find another site, which I can very easily. The site's literally next door I can use, and the farmers have approached me. But I don't really want to go down that road because I'd rather invest in my own site, which I own, which I won't need to rent off anyone else. I can fully control and just try and keep as many people happy as possible. I do understand I might not keep everyone, but I have operated for 28 years. I feel like I've got a very good following. I keep a very tidy field. When we're not there in the week, it's spotless. When I finish after every event, I make sure it's clean. And I just feel this site is the best site that I have currently got, which would work well in the summer months and the spring months, and obviously autumn, without any detrimental impact on the local community. And I feel it's further from Marston. It's the other side of the Kingsbury Road. I feel it's on the edge of the village of Lee Marston. Really, not even 1% traffic comes through Lee Marston because everything comes down the Kingsbury Road. It's an early event, and it's normally finished by noon, really. So I would very much appreciate it if you could help me with this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. I just have one final question, if I may. Do you use the field for anything other than car boot sales? Are there any other activities?
No, not currently. I take my family there on our motorbikes. There is a public footpath, and I let all the local people. I've cleared the site, I've tidied the site because it has been left abandoned for 20, 30 years. And a lot of dog walkers use the site. I let them freely walk wherever they wish. Where they should keep to the public footpath. I let them use the field as if it's a park, and I don't encourage any other activities on there. We did have one event, not even an event, where some people used this for a TV filming for a marketing campaign, which lasted one day, because they needed a countryside location. And we don't really use the field for anything else. I think the most people that use it is the locals who walk their dogs across it. And quite often, if I go down there, as strangers, I don't even confront them. I leave them to enjoy it. Because for one, it's nice that they have that space that they can just use.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
members, do any other members have any questions? In which case, Mr. Trelawney, thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you very much, members of the board. Merry Christmas, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Maida, you've asked to speak as the county councillor for the area. Would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Chair. Can I be clear that I am the county councillor that covers the Coastal District area, which includes Lee Marston and Marston. I am also a resident of Lee Marston, Chair, and also a member of Lee Marston Parish Council, if I could just record those personal interests. It's fair to open up and to say that all parties in this have worked really hard to bring this application to a position where it could reach agreement. Mr. Trelawney, as you can see, and as he said in his evidence, has had significant discussions with North Warwickshire Borough Council and with the Parish Council. Mr. Oakley presents the Parish Council's view when he speaks, and it feels sitting here that we're almost, as local interests, at a point of agreement, but not quite. Just one more deferment, I think, would be able to enable us to tighten up on some of the detail. As the county councillor, my significant concern is about the openness of the Greenbelt. And while I realise that HS2 have not objected, it feels only right that I should bring to members' attention that next to this site, HS2 will build a construction compound where every concrete structure for use in the wider northern region, which is the whole of North Warwickshire and other areas neighbouring, will be manufactured. Now, this site is going to be absolutely ginormous, and its impact on Kingsbury, its impact on Dunton Hall, its impact on the neighbouring villages will be absolutely massive. So I think if we can just agree with Mr. Trelawney some detail around amenity impact for the neighbours, we can be clear about cumulative impact in the area, and we can be clear about some road safety issues, then hopefully we would be able to reach a position where we could find some agreement. Chair, I have witnessed undangerous and unlawful traffic direction going on the 4097, which has involved people riding quad bikes, putting signage out. and I dearly hope that the County Council's conditions around lawful traffic direction are enforceable. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Members who'd like to open the discussion? I can't see any. Sorry, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I really agree with what Councillor Riley's just said. It does seem to me that there are some pending agreements, possible agreements that could be made, which would make this more acceptable for the residents and would also satisfy the applicants' need to develop on this site, car boot. So is it possible, Chairman, to defer for those further discussions? Is that an option to us?
It certainly is, Councillor Bell. If you're proposing deferment,
I'm happy to propose that.
thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let's listen to Councillor Riley. I'm happy to support local members, and I'm happy to second that motion, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, as you're aware, this is in my own ward. I absolutely agree with deferment, I have to say. For me, one of the, if not the main issue for us to work through with Mr. Taroney is the possible change in the access onto Coton Road rather than Holmes Lane. I think all of the issues that we talked about are good to progress, and we can do that as between now and the next meeting as a deferment. So personally, I'm very happy with deferment to progress the issues as well. Does anyone else wish to speak? If not, if you could all unmute, and Mr. Maxey will take a vote. Mr. Maxey.
So this is in favour of deferral. So Councillor Bell, please.
For.
Councillor Clues.
For.
Councillor Deakin.
For.
Councillor Dervix.
For.
Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Hayfield.
For.
Councillor Humphreys.
For.
Councillor Jarvis.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor MacDonald.
For.
Councillor Mawson.
For.
Councillor Moss.
For.
Councillor Parsons. Councillor Parsons.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
For.
And Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey. I'm sure in line with the music we heard, I will have no regrets in saying for.
Thank you. You're still my jerk. Thank you.
Sorry. So, members, that is deferred, and we now move on to the next application, which is for members 568 and 569 for Britannia Works in Atherstone. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you,
Kevin
Mr.
J.
Chairman.
Oakley.
Is now exiting.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members be aware that we dealt with Britannia Works a few months ago now, and that those approvals retained.
James Taroney.
Is now exiting.
And those particular approvals retain some of the buildings on the Coleshill Road frontage here on this particular site. This application is now to demolish the remaining buildings from this site such that the whole site would be cleared. If I can just run through the slides first, please, Mr. Chairman, so that we can show the buildings which we're concerned with. So the buildings here are those outlined in red. Coleshill Road being down here, Richmond Road at the top, with the canal down here and the bridge here. So it's the corner block and these two central blocks, which are now to be proposed to be demolished. The demolition would include already been approved for all of this particular area. In terms of elevations, this is the canal side elevation to that corner block, which I referred to. This is the Coleshill Road frontage, and this is the frontage of the main properties which would be demolished. In terms of the report, Mr. Chairman, you can see the recommendation is basically saying that we needed to wait to see the outcome of further information that was received or expected. That has now come in, it's been submitted and has been circulated to members. Members will have had a structural report from the engineers, which updates the position that we had several months ago, and the conclusions from that are that the buildings, all the buildings, and including the buildings to be demolished here, are still deteriorating. Also, at the end of last week, I passed on to you some financial information to back up the claim by the applicant, as outlined in the committee report, to say that the cost of retaining these buildings in terms of structural support, while everything else was going on around it, would be quite considerable. And you can see the figure of up to £500,000 was indicated in the evidence that you had in front of you. So that information has now come in. Whilst it was quite late last week, it was sent to the two objectors that we had, in other words, the Canal and River Trust and the Inland Waterways Association. I've heard this morning from the Inland Waterway Association, and the Trust was copied in, that they still object to the application for the demolition of these buildings, and that is on heritage grounds. They still feel that we should be retaining as much of the heritage as we possibly can of this particular site. However, they do agree that if planning permission is granted, then further conditions should be added to the particular to the recommendation. As a result of that, Mr. Chairman, then will alter the recommendation to say that if the board is minded to support the demolition of these additional buildings in view of the information that we've received on structure and finance, that additional conditions are attached with the agreement of yourself and the planning opposition spokesperson, and those particular extra conditions would deal with demolition methodology, particularly along the canal frontage, which is what the Trust was interested in, salvaging as many of the bricks as we possibly can from the front elevations for reuse, recording the historical significance of the buildings that are to be retained, and also that the approved plans that we had last time a few months ago for the construction of the new build here are replicated in terms of the spaces that are created through the demolition. So if you're happy with that, Mr. Chairman, I would make that recommendation, and that the conditions are delegated to myself, yourself, and Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members who would like to speak on this application? Councillor Clues.
Well, obviously, I'm in support of this application to be moved forward. It's been a dangerous building for many years, and although I do agree that the heritage could be saved if it was possible, but because of the state of the building over the past years, I don't think this is possible. But I totally agree that heritage should be kept. However, because of the situation the building's in now, I feel this isn't possible. But I'm sure that with clever, proper management, the building can be restored to look in its original condition. And I support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Clues. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's close to my patch, and I've known it for many years. And whilst I think the figures that they've given are somewhat irrelevant, in the fact that the building itself is not salvageable, no matter what money is thrown at it, because when you look at it, it's in a pretty dire state, and some of the locals will not walk down that pavement because they know that the structure itself is liable to shed bricks or whatever. So I would, I'll support the recommendation or proposal second, whichever's needed.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Hayfield.
I really regret this because, like you, Chairman, I've been on this planning committee a long time. This has been a building, it's been a heritage building that we've watched cease its function. I think you and I both went round it when it was still functioning. And there has been opportunity after opportunity to do something with this building, and it has just slowly deteriorated. And to be frank, we have sat back and watched it deteriorate. And I think that is really regrettable. And I won't vote against it, but I cannot support it. I just think this is a great shame. It was such wonderful plans we had for this at one stage, and one by one they've fallen away. We're now just faced with hell. Let's look at the state. Let's just demolish it. I think that's awful.
Thank you, Councillor Hayfield. Councillor Derwicks.
Thank you, Chair. I find that I am in total agreement with Councillor Hayfield. I am extremely unhappy that this outcome is being suggested. I understand the reasons for it, but we have been fighting ever since the factory closed to find development for this site that will be an asset to the town. And it has dragged on so long with a variety of developers coming in, buying it, getting planning permission. We've spent so much time as a committee with different plans for this. It's almost unbelievable. And every one of them, the developers have then proceeded to back down or sell it on instead of developing it themselves. So I'm really unhappy that this has happened. I can see that there may be an argument now that if we don't accept this, that it's going to have to be demolished, and there may not be somebody who is prepared to move forward on this in the ways that we have developed. And I do note that in the proposal, it suggests that the buildings are rebuilt so that they are similar to what is supposed to be retained. And I think that Mr. Brown has actually answered one of my concerns with this, in that if the whole site is demolished, there is nothing retained. And if we do accept this and allow it to happen, I think it is essential that we make sure that the conditions are tight enough so that any demolition does retain the old materials and does retain the designs that have already been agreed. What I do not want to see is that it's used as an excuse to say, well, it's all gone. We don't need to follow those design principles that we have all spent so long developing on this site. As I said, I find it very, very disappointing that developers haven't managed to move forward with this on the past. And I feel that it isn't because of a lack of effort on the part of either this committee or the officers that have spent so much time on it. And I think they should be commended for the care that they have put in to try and save this important heritage site. And I still think that if there is any possible way to save these buildings, we should try to do it. I'm a little bit in despair as to whether we can actually achieve that now. But as I say, I would like to make sure that the protections that I've mentioned are put in to any way that we do go forwards on this. I'm afraid from a heritage point of view, I really can't support demolishing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Derricks. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm rather puzzled actually by last two speakers over this. Obviously, I am disappointed that we can't keep the facades that we wanted to keep, but particular Councillor Hayfield seemed to imply that somehow it was this committee's fault. In the short, in the 5 or 6 years I've been on this committee, I can remember several times when we've approved applications which would have preserved these historic parts. And it's been proven time after time that developers can't do it in a meaningful way that, that is cost effective for them. And we just have to accept that now, added to the fact that the building has deteriorated over that time. And it won't be a question of whether we allow the demolition or not. If we wait much longer, it'll just fall down. So, the really, regrettably, there isn't a choice. I mean, I'm usually standing up for all the heritage that we have in the area. But in this case, I think we have to be realistic. It is a building that needs redeveloping. We are going to make the effort to retain the original materials and then reconstruct those facades in the way that they look now. And I think, in my view, it's the best that we can do. It is very sad that we can't keep it, but we can't. And I think we need to move forward, get this building developed before it falls down on its own.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair. Pretty well supporting or agreeing with what Councillor Bell has said, that this building now has been empty for 21 years. It was like 1999 when it was vacated by the hat factory. There's been numerous attempts to resurrect it. There has been areas that have had to be taken down because they are dangerous, and there's more areas becoming dangerous. As Councillor Bell said, if we leave it for the winter, it'll come down on its own. There'll be no need to knock it down. There are so many fractures and failures in that building that I think we as a board would be remiss in stopping its demolition because it is so dangerous. And as I said previously, there are people that live in that area that will not walk down that side of the road or park their cars on that side of the road, because when you look skywards, you can see bricks that are loose. And the amount of vegetation that's growing out the side, it's not just a few weeds, they are mature trees growing out the side, which has created significant cracks in the structure of the building and making it unstable. When you look at the reports, it's quite evident from that the surveyors have said they will not go in because it is dangerous. And I think they're suggesting that even demolishing it will be dangerous because they've got to get in there to a degree to actually demolish it. So demolition will not be an easy thing to do. As I said before, I support the recommendation from Mr. Brown that the whole lot is demolished, but retaining the character when it's rebuilt.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I sympathise with all the speakers. I think it is a shame that we've got to this situation. As you say, we've worked, and I know local members have worked hard trying to keep this thing going and trying to move things on. But I think it's past time for regret. I think it's past time, as Ray has just said. I think we will be remiss if we allow this to continue. It isn't a dangerous situation. I wouldn't like to walk past there on a rainy day. I wouldn't like to walk past there on a windy day. I just think we now owe it to Atherstone to do something about it. It's not going to. No one's going to move in there and wave a magic wand and going to sort of get this thing back into what we'd like it to be. It's far too dangerous for anyone to work in there. and I'll second the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Members, anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Brown, before we move to a vote, the cumulative impact of this proposal and previous ones will be complete demolition of the site.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Members, I'm in that classic position of my head saying one thing and my heart saying another. And I agree with almost everything that everybody has said tonight. Listed buildings are not listed to protect pretty ones or to protect those that are in good nick. They're to protect our heritage. And demolition of any listed building is a matter of deep regret. Having said that, there are practical issues. We have, as a board, I think, an enviable reputation and history of actually protecting the buildings that have a viable use going forward. And part of the difficulty with this site is to ensure that it had a viable future. I take absolutely no pleasure in this recommendation, but that doesn't mean I don't recognise the practical issues behind it. My heart says protect the building. It's the building that matters. My head says it has to have a viable use at the most cost-effective route forward. And I absolutely share everyone's concerns over where we are and why we got here and where we're going. Councillor Derricks.
Thank you. I understand all those things that you've said, and I understand why. But I would still like to have some assurance with it that the rebuilding of this does reflect what is there. If we accept that it's got to go, which I think I've got to, I would still like to have the assurance that the conditions that are already there are sufficient to make sure that we get what we were aiming for, even if it has to be rebuilt while those buildings were in existence. I don't want to see a completely new design that has no reflection on what is there at the moment. Is it possible to do that? Is it already in the recommendations, or is it possible to add one to them to make sure that that continues, rather than starting again because the whole thing has been raised to the ground?
Thank you, Councillor Derricks. I think it's condition 3 of both recommendations, but Mr. Brown?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's condition 3, and you'll see there a whole list of plan numbers, which in fact the plans which were approved, well, in fact they're the elevations which were approved a few months ago when we dealt with the first round of demolition. Speaking to the applicant himself, as you're aware, Mr. Chairman, from discussions and meetings that we've had, does want to retain the front elevation. It's his selling point in terms of retaining and marketing the site. It's the USP of this particular site, which he sees as a major benefit. So, in fact, I'm pretty sure he will comply with that condition.
And is this the strongest that we can make this condition, Mr. Brown? I do share Councillor Derricks' concern that, you know, and I'm not trying to be disparaging of the applicant or his intention, but we know this site has been sold on a number of times, and you know, situation changes with different owners. Is there anything else we can do to be absolutely clear that the facade will be built in the way that we'd like it to be?
It can only be done by that condition, Mr. Chairman. We can't prevent an applicant coming in or the current owner coming in with a different design, and then you have the option to refuse. But at the present time, the wording of that condition is as strong as we can take.
And I absolutely, I'm sure I'm speaking here for other members where I say the additional conditions of the photographic record and the salvage of whatever materials are salvable are absolutely the minimum for some of us.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. This is why I said that I would draft the conditions and circulate them for agreement with members.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? In which case it's been proposed and seconded. And if you could unmute, we'll move to a vote. Mr. Maxey.
So again, Chairman, just to be absolutely sure, so this is to amend the recommendation to delegate the decision to Mr. Brown, to include additional conditions around demolition methodology, salvaging brickwork according to historical signs, and that the approved plan for constructions are as replicated in the previous permission, and that delegation is in consultation with yourself and Councillor Phillips.
And I'd add in Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Dervix as local members. If everyone's happy with that, I should say.
Yeah. Yes, I'm happy.
Thank you. Okay. In which case, Councillor Bell, please.
4.
Councillor Clues.
4.
Councillor Deakin.
4.
Councillor Dervix.
Very reluctantly 4.
Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
Abstain.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
4.
Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
And Councillor Simpson.
Most I can do is an abstention.
That's carried.
Thank you, members. That's carried, and we will be in touch with everyone regarding the future applications and conditions. Members, we now move to agenda item number 6, which is the planning enforcement policy. Mr. Byrne, anything to add to your recommendation?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman, apart from the recommendation clearly talks about a possibility of having a training session later on. I'm thinking about this again, and in view of the fact that members will probably want some time to read the existing policy and review the half a dozen bullet points that I put there on 3.2, it might well be that Mr. Chairman, you might want to look at the possibility of a small little group of members to review the policy rather than actually wait for individual members to come back with their own respective comments. That's the only additional thing I'll have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members, any comments or questions, suggestions? Councillor Mawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to say that's an excellent idea.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? Councillor Bell.
I agree, Chairman. I'll be quite happy to be part of the group. Thank you.
Councillor Phillips, if you're in agreement, I'd suggest 3 and 2. We could put our suggestions forward, unless you have some ready.
I think myself and Councillor Mawson.
Thank you. And from our side, I would suggest Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Bell, and myself. Mr. Max, would that need to be ratified by full council or executive, or can we make that decision here?
No, Chairman, I think it's effectively a subcommittee of this committee, and so therefore it's within the power of this committee to set that up.
Well, congratulations on getting committee in the same sentence as many times as that.
Yes, particularly as it's not a committee, it's a board. So,
members, it goes without saying that absolutely every one of you is more than welcome to attend as well. It's not an attempt to be exclusive, as inclusive as possible. So, you know, we'll make sure that everyone's aware of the dates and times, and please do come and join us. Given that it's been, I think, proposed and seconded, can I, Mr. Maxey, will you take the vote, please?
Councillor Bell.
4.
Councillor Clues.
4.
Councillor Deakin. Councillor Deakin. I'll come back to Councillor. Oh, sorry, thank you. Councillor Dervix.
4.
Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
4.
Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
And Councillor Simpson.
4. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Agenda item number 7 is to note the minutes of the Local Development Framework Subcommittee. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those minutes?
Move the recommendation.
I'm happy to move that. Well done.
Thank you very much.
I'll second that then.
If that's a non-contentious item, we can note it without a vote. So if everyone's happy with that, we'll move on.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Members, we now move to agenda item 8, which I move.
Second it.
Mr. Maxey?
Councillor Bell.
4.
Councillor Clues.
Sorry, I got caught up. 4. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Deakin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Durbix.
4.
Councillor Downs.
4.
Councillor Hayfield.
4.
Councillor Humphreys.
4.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mawson.
4.
Councillor Moss.
4.
Councillor Parsons.
4.
Councillor Phillips.
4.
And Councillor Simpson.
4. Members, that's unanimous.